On May 10, 1869, an event Americans would learn about and know for generations happened at Promontory Summit, Utah. A golden spike was hammered into the ground, connecting the two cross-country railways and completing the famous Transcontinental Railroad, and the world of transportation changed forever. This marked the beginning of a new chapter for the people of the Americas, and not just materially. The success of the Transcontinental Railroad encouraged an American faith that with money, determination, and organization, anything can be accomplished. Being able to shape the environment and the world to their liking was an idea that revolutionized American transportation and business in the latter 19th century. Thus, the gateway was open for an age of entrepreneurship, and the man representing this age is a man by the name of James J. Hill. Hill would go on, without government assistance, to create a lesser-known, but just as important railway, the Great Northern Railway. Hill and the Great Northern Railway are the epitomes of the new spirit of the 1800s, the new spirit that man was capable of shaping the world and the environment along with it. James J. Hill was born on September 16, 1838 in Ontario, Canada. He would later pioneer the construction of the Great Northern Railway, but his life did not begin luxuriously by any means. Growing up, his father was constantly in between jobs, managing hirement as a farmhand, and he somehow managed to have his son admitted into Rockwood Academy. Unfortunately, at the age of 14, James's father died, and James had to leave school to help support his family financially. James always valued his education, so despite the hardships he faced, he made education a priority in his life, so he managed to study arithmetic and writing with the local reverend in his free time. Later, his desire for a better life and possible future as a fur trader led him to the United States, where at the age of 17 he became a worker for a steamboat company. As Hill shifted from job to job, he acquired a wide range of skills like buying, selling, and transporting goods from each of his employers. Later, in 1865, Hill entered the transportation field on his own account to represent a steamboat line connecting with eastbound rails at lower Mississippi River points. Hill's grand entrance to the business of transportation led him to a world that was at the heart of the current American economy and culture, the world of railroads. Since that golden spike was driven into the ground, the railroad industry had become a booming business at the heart of the American economy, transporting goods, resources, and people across the nation. And it wasn't just an economic contributor. The railroad system was quickly becoming key to America's cultural and social structure, representing some portion of the American dream, the idea that technology, hard work, and innovation could drive the nation, and creating a new top-tier social class of tycoons who would rise to the top of the capitalist heap. Little did Hill know that he was soon to join their ranks. With business savvy and transportation experience under his belt, by the early 1870s, Hill saw an opportunity to build a railroad system through the Red River Valley. Hill had in mind the economic development of the entire region. He had shrewdly observed the St. Paul and Pacific's failure to capitalize on the region's wealth and natural resources previously. With no railroad, the valley could only be accessed by boat, and winter ice was often impassable. People living there would have no way to get the supplies they needed to work the rich soil or to deliver their crops to market. Hill's grand entrance into the railway business would be his purchasing of the bankrupt St. Paul and Pacific Railroad, which connected St. Paul, Minnesota to St. Anthony near Minneapolis. He sold all his other interests for around $100,000, and with the help of some other wealthy locals, purchased the railroad. He transformed the bankrupt railroad into the highly successful St. Paul, Minnesota and Manitoba Railway Company. Success came quickly to Hill, as by 1881 the Manitoba Company operated 695 miles of track, and just one short year later, in 1882, Hill became president of the company. While owning the company, Hill upgraded the Manitoba, switching over from wood to coal, replacing old iron rails with new steel ones. He also expanded the railroad into local markets by conservatively yet strategically developing branch lines. He would later be referred to by Governor of Minnesota Joseph A. Burnquist as the greatest constructive genius of the Northwest. Hill continued to look even further, his eyes now turned towards the Pacific. No other company before him had tried building on such a massive scale without government land grants or financial concessions. Many believed the task was impossible, and his mission was nicknamed by many as Hill's Folly. His plan was to extend the line north into the Rocky Mountains and eventually to Seattle. He sent out an engineer, John F. Stevens, to scout the region. Stevens came back telling of the Marius Pass, a pass that allowed Hill to lead his railway through the Rockies without the use of a tunnel, and in 1890 Stevens discovered a second pass through Washington's Cascade Mountains. By January 1893, with the completion of a tunnel through the Cascades, the Great Northern reached Puget Sound, and his goal had been met. The final spike was driven near scenic Washington on January 6, 1893, completing the transcontinental project. The Great Northern Railway, as it had been named 3 years prior, had reached the Pacific. Hill didn't just develop his railway, however, he expanded everything else along the route. Throughout his years of creating, encouraging, and directing, Hill's creed was the development of the resources of the region the railway served. He knew the railway could not prosper unless its territory prospered. Hill would make the offer to immigrants, who mainly came from Norway or Sweden, to travel across the country for $10, provided they chose to settle along the way. Hill took advantage of the social climate of the time to further profit his rail system. Hill's railway would cause many settlements to appear in its wake, called railway towns. Engineer and journalist Dr. Bill Zingheim describes these towns as exploding into existence. One such railway town that Dr. Zingheim describes is that of Skykomish, a town whose location was selected by John Stevens himself. The town was founded in 1892 and was used as a base for men and supplies, and would later be a base for lumber and mining operations that would cause the town to flourish. Hill personally made sure that settlement and development spread. He advocated crop diversification and showed farmers how to improve their methods. He imported purebred cattle from abroad and distributed them among the farmers. He labored greatly to create traffic for his trains, and, as a result, left settled, productive land in his wake. It is undoubtable, then, that Hill and his railway were a true force of American expansion. Where there once was wilderness, the Great Northern Railway brought development, industry, and most importantly, people. The Great Northern Railway and many other railways at the time brought about the development of national parks as well. Many of the railway companies of the late 1800s were crucial in the development, financing, and marketing of the national parks. So successful were the railroads in lobbying for national parks, the environmentalists of the time began to partner with the railroad companies. This is a bizarre reversal of not only the previous political climate, but also of how industrialism is viewed today. Thus, when the Great Northern Railway played a key role in the creation of the Glacier National Park, it brought in more tourists to visit the new park, which brought in more money. Therefore, although it is often perceived that the industrial forces of the late 1800s did nothing but destroy the environment for its own personal gain, it is clear that it was not an entirely one-sided exchange. It was also a powerful force in American business, even internationally. Author F.I. Whitney wrote in his account of the railway that branches of the Great Northern Railway like giant fingers gather from this goodly land a multitude of varied products, and aided by connecting steamer lines carry them east to older states, to England and Europe, and west to the new American colonies, to China, Japan, and the growing markets of the wide Orient. The line transferred crops and was able to give access to what proved to be large iron ore deposits in northern Minnesota. Increasing tonnage of ore was moved for the nation's iron and steel. By 1901, the railway exceeded 5,000 miles of track. According to Hill's design, the railway made full use of the fruits of the environment around it, and in exchange, left settlements and cities in its wake. Given all his successes, it is clear that Hill's story captures the zeitgeist of the late 19th century. For the first time, the ideas of industry and the power of technology was encountered by America and mankind as a whole, and with that power an exchange occurs between man and the environment in which it thrives. This power with which people like Hill shape the world brings about social interaction, cultural shift, and economic prosperity. Hill acts as a microcosm for what people, no matter their humble origins, could now do with this power. The power of business, the power of the railroad, and ultimately the power of man to shape the world.